Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. All right. Well, we've been doing this show, as most of our listeners will know, since January of 2017. Our second guest on the show is also the co-host for this week, specially appearing from, I won't tell everybody where he's participating from, but if he wants me to. And we have this show every week, and we try to help business owners learn something, whatever it is. It could be a story about someone who went from A to Z, made a success of themselves, or they know a special subject, special area. That's what we try to do each week on the Ask Brien radio show. And Brien is spelled B-R-I-E-N, and we have a resident expert, Mr. Alex Grossman, who's going to try to explain to us why, or what does the letter E in Brien stand for? Because most people spell it A-N or Y-A-N. Why are you spelling it with an E? You're not Irish, are you? Alex, are you Irish? Are you Mr. O'Brien? Is that you?
Mr. O'Brien? No, not today. Not today.
All right. So why do they spell? So give me the first most important reason why Brien is spelled with an E.
Well, you can't do Ask Brien without an engineer. I believe that one starts with an E.
Nailed it.
All right.
Thank you, Alex.
All right.
And I don't think Grossman is Irish. I don't.
Oh, it is. Oh, Grossman. Why not?
Grossman,
Why
yeah.
not?
Grossman.
One day a year called St. Patrick's Day. That's
Yes. I think
We're all
most
Irish.
of us get to do
And
that.
drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or okay is also.
And drunk.
Yeah, well, Alex is a big alcoholic. Oh shit, I shouldn't tell anyone. All right, whatever.
I am. Well, you're the Long Island iced tea guy.
Well, that is
without the
true.
Long Island
I have
part.
iced tea, and I am from Long Island, so this must be a Long Island iced tea, right? All right. So, Alex, give me some other reasons why Brien is spelled with an E. While I guess.
Well, I'm going to give you my favorite reason. It's because of the enthusiasm that this show entails. It's just this incredible amount of enthusiasm that we have here.
And excitement! Ooh, I was losing it on that one.
That's pretty bad.
I need to.
Which leads me to the.
I need to drink more iced tea for that one next
Eardrum
time.
surgery. Yeah, a little eardrum surgery after that one. That's all. You didn't give me enough warning.
It's a good thing that
one.
ear
I was able to pull the speaker away from my ear.
Well, it's a good thing that ear isn't spelled with an E. Well, excuse me. That's how people now start spelling words without E's. What are some of the other reasons why Brien is spelled with an E?
Well, one of the most important things that the Ask Brien show does is educate. And I believe edumacation is the way we say that. That's with an E, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, that's under euphonics, yes.
Yes. And then of course, there's a certain amount of expertise that's given by the experts in the show. And what are experts, Peter? I'm not sure about that.
Well, I will give out the Ask Brien a logarithm, unlike Google, who kind of keeps it to themselves. Anyway, what we determine to be an expert is we figure out the average person needs 5 years in a subject or doing something to become an expert. So what we calculated out is you work 40 hours a week, and you work 50 weeks a year, and 40 hours a week is 2,000 hours times 5 years is 10,000 hours. So we figured out, we calculated it out by hours. You need 10,000 hours. And now every entrepreneur, Alex, I know you have your own business. What do you work, 2 hours a week? I know that's...
Oh, at the most. On a busy week, I'm working an hour, maybe. Yeah.
Exactly. So Alex is probably an expert in the business that he runs, knowing how many hours he works probably in a year and a half. Because he's not working 40 hours a week. He's working 100 hours a week. But anyway.
I wish. That's 40 hours a week is called a vacation to me, Peter. Come on.
Exactly. Exactamundo. Another E. Exactamundo. Now, the one thing that you haven't said, and you should have said about the ears thing is, Peter, if you had this one E, I wouldn't be having ear trouble, and I wouldn't be screamed in there. What is that called? It's called empathy. Right? If you had empathy.
Yeah, I think you're lacking that. Our engineer would agree to that, I guarantee.
Well, that's because
okay.
I don't have a sound effect for that, but yes.
Instead of empathy, I have something bigger. It's called ego.
Ego.
And my ego is big enough that I don't have to worry about empathy.
We have to shoehorn you in here. Yes.
Uh,
And we are
so
like
true. So true.
we are like the Sesame Street for the word letter E, right? Big Bird coming out and telling us what all these E's are for.
You do give a Gonzo vibe. Yes. Yeah. That does track.
And Jen always says, Peter, you look exactly like Big Bird. She's always telling me that every day.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. He's warm and
And he's a
fluffy,
little
though.
more handsome. But
Yeah.
other than that, yeah.
and don't forget,
He's
yeah.
way more endearing, I think, Peter. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
it's true.
Well, and Alex's favorite character on Sesame Street also has an E in it, Ernie.
Ernie.
Bert and Ernie. All right, now
Wow.
our guest is like going, I thought this was a business show. I thought I was going to be interviewed. What is going on here? What is all this stuff going on between the people? Well, we just want to warm everybody up. And without any further ado, ADIEU, only one consonant, all vowels. We're going to introduce our guest. His name is Nguyen. Is that correct?
That's correct, Peter.
All right. Do I just test an English accent, or what is that? Another E, by the way, English.
No, it's not an E. It's an A for Australia, unfortunately. So my accent is from Australia. I was born in Vietnam, but when I was 6, my family immigrated to Australia, and I grew up there for about 20 years. And even though, living in the United States and everything, I can't get rid of the accent, unfortunately, Peter.
Well, you know how we love foreigners here. So anyway, we'll take this show anyway because we needed a guest. All right, so now that was your personal background, and obviously everyone has a personal story. But let's talk about your. And by the way, another big E that Alex forgot, and we'll ding him later because the engineer had to take off for a second. We're gonna hit you with a gong, Alex. Do you know why?
Uh-oh. Why?
Entrepreneur is an E. Right.
Well, we weren't getting there yet. You got to steal that show and bring the guest on before we got to talk about our guest who's an entrepreneur.
Well,
It's today.
Most of our guests are entrepreneurs, which is why they only have to work 2 hours a week, like you. But
It's true.
so let's get a little bit more of your business background and everything. We have a personal story here of how. And by the way, you can tell us how you got to America, but also tell us a little bit about your background. Your business expertise, and how you got to what you are today.
Well, I think like as most entrepreneurs, you kind of start early at a young age. You think a little bit different to everyone else. So, entrepreneurs, I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was like 10, 12 years old. What I did was there were these shops in Australia. We called them news agents. Back in the day when everyone used to read newspapers. So I would get the contract at like 12 years old to try to deliver newspapers every weekend. And I would go down to the store in my little wheelbarrow and I'd get all the newspapers and I'd deliver it. And then I realized, like, hang on, I can get the local kids. I can pay them to deliver. I'll just collect the newspapers in the morning and then they'll go and deliver for me. So I had my first set of employees when I was 12. And I always wanted to go down the entrepreneurial path, just doing little projects like that and, doing things like doing parties in college and things like that. I think that's like the best experience you can get because, it's you have to figure things out by yourself, right? The road is never really shown to you. And so I started in Australia. My closest friend, he had a manufacturing business that did like frozen food to the biggest supermarkets in Australia. And, I learned a lot. It was sort of like the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, where I had like my own dad at home. And then I had a rich dad who I would learn about business, learn about creating a business and all the pain and hardship and struggles. And that's how I really started, Peter. So it was all started in Australia with a small factory in Sydney, and then it expanded to me moving to Vietnam for a little bit, learning about manufacturing in Vietnam, then moving to the United Kingdom, learning how to sell to supermarkets in the United Kingdom, and then in 2009, I took all that experience of working for my parents, my best friend's company, and I opened their U.S. division. And that's how I started in '09 in the global financial crisis, Peter.
And so you came to America in 2009, and that was when you started your own business, or you had?
Yeah, so I grew up from a poor background. With my family was extremely poor, but I was a good student, and obviously my friend's family, they took me in and they gave me the opportunity, which I'm very thankful of, and they saw something in me. They saw that basically I like pain. That's what I think entrepreneurs. If you don't like pain, don't be an entrepreneur. Like Alex and Peter,
Absolutely.
you guys know this. And there's no hours. There's no set hours. When people say, how many hours a week? I'm like, you count the hours? Well, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't really count the hours, do you? It's more about getting things done. So I think the first lesson was you have to like pain. You have to be able to endure pain, because there's going to be physical, emotional, mental, every type of pain you can have, you will have it along the journey of being an entrepreneur.
Does that mean you have to be a sadomasochist?
I think so. I was trying to think of a word with E that is like a synonym to sadomasochist, but I really do think you have to enjoy pain. Like Elon said it, right? He said one of his friends is being an entrepreneur in a startup is like looking through a glass and looking through a telescope and chewing glass. That's exactly what it feels like,
Well, and Alex is in that process right now, and he just loves the working hours that he has. He's expressed this a couple of times. He just loves it. He's going like, Peter, this is the best thing ever. I mean, I love it. I don't get to see my family ever. Another E.
It's every man's dream. I can tell you that, just guaranteed.
Absolutely. So
the dream.
I say that with a little sarcasm.
Yeah.
Not an E, unfortunately. Close.
It's like the iceberg picture, right, Alex? It's like the picture of the iceberg. I'm sure you guys have seen, right? The iceberg where
Absolutely.
people only see the top of the tip, and then they don't see everything below the water, right? They don't see the years of pain, Like, to get into Trader Joe's, I failed for 7 years, Peter and Alex. It took me 7 years. And literally, I still remember the conversation like yesterday. It was the lady at Trader Joe's, she said, V, you leave me voicemails, you email me, like I've got like 500 emails from you in the last 2-3 years. I've got like a voicemail from you, which was one of the tricks I did. I called her at the same time every week, and I just left her a little voicemail message, and I just didn't try to sell her anything after a while, I just kept in contact, and I just tried to be of value. Anything that was happening in that particular industry or something that I thought would help her, I would send her something. I would send her a note, and then it became a regular repeat occurrence of just constant rejection, right? For years.
You just wore her down. You wore her right down, right?
Hey, that sounds.
Wore her down to the point she had to say yes.
Alex, that sounds like my dating life.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little more successful, though. I hate to say it, but yeah, okay.
No, it's exactly the same thing. That's my same strategy. I just wear them down, right, until finally they can see that you're consistent and you follow through, which is what everyone wants in business and life, right? A partner that follows through. And so she finally actually said to me, V, you basically annoyed me to the point where what can you do for us in Trader Joe's? And that opened the whole door and opened all the opportunities. But it was literally 7 years of failing. So, it has to be pain. It has to be a bit of,
So,
you have to enjoy, right?
So, Alex,
enjoy the pain.
Alex, V is an expert in failure.
Yeah,
he is. Yes, I love it.
That's it.
He's like, please make the pain. She's like, please make the pain stop, V. Please.
I'm the one like, can you give me a little bit more? Just increase the morphine and give me a little bit more pain, A
little more pain. Love it.
So what was the first product you ever got into Trader Joe's?
I remember it was a shrimp item. So it was a appetizer pack. Because at the time, another trick I did was, because I traveled so much, you can take ideas from what's happening around the world. So when I went to the UK, I saw they were doing a lot of like party appetizer type items, and I saw that Trader Joe's didn't do that type of item, and so I kind of like stole the idea, and then I tweaked the ingredients, etc., and presented to Trader Joe's. So it was like a Christmas, holiday appetizer pack with shrimp, spring rolls, and egg rolls, and a variety pack, if you will. And that got us in the door at Trader Joe's for my first company.
Well, that's interesting because I think at Trader Joe's is more of being health conscious, and the first thing you're getting in there are egg rolls and shrimp. I mean, it's like, I guess it's healthy to a certain level, but that's not.
I'm getting hungry
right.
here, that's all.
That's a good point. That's a great point, Peter, because I think that's the other big lesson. The reason why was I was going against the grain, if you will. Don't go against the grain, go with the grain, It's really hard swimming against the tide. If you guys have ever tried to swim against the tide, that's a really hard thing to do. So what we were doing in the first business was we were swimming against the tide. We were selling unhealthy products, Peter and Alex,
Well,
So
that sounds like the Ask
that was
Brien
all-
show. We go against the tide too.
So yeah, you want to be swimming with the tide. You want to be the gluten-free and the health-conscious. You're exactly right. That's why it took so long to get into Trader Joe's from day one, because the category of items they were in, or my first backers were in, was a declining category, and that's why it was so difficult. We were swimming against the grain of what Trader Joe's was doing, and generally what the general populace is doing. The general populace is trying to get healthier, less fried, and our products were all fried. So that's why it took forever.
Well, that's why I want to get into the deep fried donut business. That's a really good one. All right, so we only have about a minute left, and so my question is, for that first product for Trader Joe's, were you a distributor and bringing the product in, or was it your own product itself?
So I did everything, and I did all the hats. I did the engineering hat, I did the product development hat, and when you're at the start, I guess that's why the hours are so many, right? You become knowledgeable. You know a little bit about a lot. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to know a little bit about a lot. Have to know a bit of engineering, have to know a bit of sales, have to know a little food science, and just generally know everything and direct everything as the resources and everything together. But when you're working for someone else, you just know a lot about a little, right? You've got your space,
Absolutely.
your accounting, finance, whatever. And so, I had to learn a lot about a little. Every question, what certifications do I need? What sustainability and environmental certifications do I need? I had to become an expert in all these little areas just to get to the table, Peter.
Wow, that's amazing. We're going to be taking a quick break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Like no other station in the world! V, I didn't know if you knew that, so that's why I had to tell you. Anyway,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Alex said I've been hogging all the time, and he said, when am I going to ask a question? So, Alex, go ahead, because I try to empathize with you, sir.
Well, thank you, Peter. We're keeping a check on your ego, so it's all good at this point.
The ego,
So,
Jen said
V,
she was amazed that my head could get through the door.
well, it's going to be hard no matter what you do. V, so you have a really interesting background, interesting story, and I love the idea of getting into Trader Joe's. And I'm sure the Trader Joe's person who you worked with is cringing right now, going, "Oh my gosh, I remember that, and that guy was so good." But you're in an interesting position, and you have your website and a little bit up on what you said and what you do. But you're in an interesting position because you're in the middle. We'll call you the broker at this point, right? You have buyers and you have sellers, and you represent the seller to get them into the buyers. And it seems like that is an interesting position, but how do you go about that? How people come to you and they say, I have this product, and then do you say, well, I have these buyers, or do you say, well, let's look at the market, figure out where they go, and what services do you provide, and how do you see that work as an entrepreneur?
That's an excellent question, Alex. So that's a really excellent question. So the first thing I do is you have to do the due diligence, right? You have to become, another E word, the expert. You just have to become the expert. Whatever you're selling, you better know everything about it, basically. And now, nowadays with all the technology available, you can come up to speed with a lot of different product categories and a lot of different things in the supermarket aisle very quickly. But you have to be the expert is the number one thing. So the expert means knowing the seller's product intimately, backwards and forwards, production, competitive advantages, the market itself, where their space is in the marketplace. And so you become really much a consultant to them beyond just the seller. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the buyer. That's the framework I always try to think of things. So if it's Walmart, if it's Costco, I'm sitting in the buyer's perspective and trying to think, would I buy this item? And so you have to become the expert of that subcategory, and then you work with them, the seller, to find out which retailers. Like some retailers, and this is the big secret, right? You're not perfect for all the retailers. Everyone wants the dream is to get into Costco, Walmart, Trader Joe's, all of them, right? And just, get that market penetration, get the sales volume across country and gather all that data. But the truth is, the majority of companies, you're not suited to work with Walmart, perhaps. Maybe you're better at Costco. So that's the first start. You got to figure out who would be most appropriate for your category of products, and that's the first starting framework. And then the bigger competitive advantage, I think, is that we get them on shelf, but then we follow up as well. So we have a division of that we're growing, which is more of the marketing side of things. So there's an item that we've done recently that's doing exceptionally well, and what we've been able to do is, to work out a marketing plan. What sort of channels, what social media channels should you be using? Any traditional media you should be using, and that is the real competitive advantage, because it goes back to what I said at the start, right? If you're the expert on your product, you should be the expert on who buys your product, and where do those people. It's a very simple question. For marketing, I always put it for supermarkets and marketing. It's just answer me this question: your customers, where do they hang out online, and where do they hang out offline? And you can't be everything to everyone, right? So who is your tribe? I like Russell Brunson's framework for marketing. If you guys have heard of Russell Brunson, he charges like $200,000 a day for consulting. So he's built lots of businesses, and he's someone that I like to listen to and follow for marketing. And he expresses it in a way that is really easy for me, easy and straightforward, which is, who is your tribe? You can't be everything to everyone at the start. You don't have the budget. No one has the budget for that. So if I'm going to target, my product is for, it's for yoga mums, for example. I'll take it. Where do your yoga mums hang out online? Where do your yoga mums hang out offline? And then we go backwards from there. Which retailer should we be in then? Which region should we be in? It goes back to that tribe and knowing your product. So it's a whole holistic jigsaw puzzle that we help you put together. And then, as I said, getting on shelf is 50% of the battle. There's no point getting on shelf and not selling well, and then you lose the slot, and then all that work that you put in. Because the process, Alex, you're talking about 6 to 12 months to get into these big retailers at the minimum, So it's a lot of investment of resources, time, and effort, and you want to make sure you get it right from the start. Because if you get it right from the start, all the doors open up. And that's the second little secret, Alex. Once you have the data, once you have the first bit of success, you use that data and you can extrapolate and tweak your strategy from there. Once you figure out that first tribe, then, it's easier. They become your cheerleaders. They become your cheerleaders for your product, and they become the ones that tell about your product to their friends. And that's how it goes viral, and that's how you get like huge ROIs on return from marketing, because you're an expert, like you guys said at the start, right? The Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, right? 5 years, 10,000 hours. If you master your product and your tribe, your first tribe, that's the real first secret to having success on a minimal budget.
That's very true. Okay, we've got about 2 minutes before our next break, but I want to ask you this kind of a difficult question. Hopefully, if we have to carry it over the break, but how do you go about, you're in the U.S., a lot of your clients are in Asia. How do you acquire your clients?
So it's been a lot of word of mouth and trade shows are the two major ways, Alex. And for me, look, I don't have like a huge team. I'm not like one of the big, distributors or brokers that have, hundreds of employees and things like that. So what I focus on is the arbitrage initially at the start. So I go to trade shows and I try to find manufacturers that already have a presence in the U.S. because getting that first customer might take them years, and I don't want to be involved in that process. I have been involved in that process, and it took me, like as I said, 7 years to get into Trader Joe's, right? So you don't want to be spending years with a client and not generating revenue. So I focus right now is, are you in the U.S. already? Are you in a Walmart? Are you in a Costco? What does your data look like? And then let me help expand that presence and that distribution. So that's what I call the low-hanging fruit, Alex. That's the easiest that I start off with. So if they've already got data, the data serves as a really good way for you to determine whether it will work or will not work.
Sounds good.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. Listening to the Ask Brien Radio Show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And now a word from our sponsor, Legal Steps.
And we want to say thank you to Legal Steps. It's LEGALSTEPZ. It's spelled with a Z.com. And once you log on to legalsteps.com, you have the choice between 3 different courses. You can learn to register a trademark, form an LLC, or form an S corporation. Once you decide which course is for you, you are on your way. And the great thing, there's a couple of great things about legalsteps.com. First of all, the affordability. It's quite affordable, especially considering, you've got this great idea. You've had this wonderful idea for however many months and maybe years, and you're finally ready to make that leap into starting your own business, and you can do that for less than $150. So don't let something like $150 get in the way of this great idea that you've had for however long. Once you're logged on, it's very easy to follow through. So you kind of have like a screen in screen, like a picture in picture. So you're working on your part of it. You can see your expert on the screen kind of in the corner there, and you see their screen as well. So you know that you're answering the questions the right way because certainly there's a lot to answer, a lot to cover, and you want to make sure that you're doing it properly. If you get to the point where you're just super confused and frustrated, they will just do it for you. So there's really no excuses, and you're going to come out in the end all the better and having this bit of knowledge under your belt. All of these courses that you are taking are reviewed by the attorneys that I'm talking about, those experts who, by the way, have over 30 years experience. So you know that you're in good hands. And the other thing that I loved about it too, not only being able to work at your own pace, you could do it from the comfort of your own home, and you don't have to worry about working with someone else's schedule on their time. Make this work for you with your family, your other job, other things that you have to answer to. You're able to pause it, rewind it, kind of take notes, go back if you missed something, if something didn't make sense. It's really it's very easy. It's starting your own business for ding dongs, 101. Couldn't be easier. Go to legalsteps.com, LEGALSTEPZ.com.
Well, thank you very much,
You're
Legal
welcome.
Steps.
Yes.
Thank you, Jen.
You got it.
And we're back to the radio show. You're listening to the Ask Brien Radio Show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. And what she said is really true. A ding-dong can do it, and I was able to do it. So that's proof.
If you were able to do it, all right, well, there we
Anyone
go.
can.
And I mean ding-dong in the most lovingly way. That's my favorite word to call people, and I mean it in a nice way.
In a truly empathetic way.
Yes. There you go. There you go. Another E.
And I also like to eat ding-dongs. It's a very good, like that cream inside.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now, Alex, you were continuing your conversation. Hello.
Oh.
Did I lose you?
Sorry about that. So we were talking about, a little bit about how you acquire the customers, which sounds really good. The question is, how do you acquire the retailers from those customers? I mean, do you go with the simple, hey, I've got something to pitch you, or do you sometimes find they come to you and say, hey, if you only had this little shrimp basket, it would be the perfect thing for me. So how does that work?
That is the $1 million secret, Alex.
Oh, there we go. Only $1 million? Only $1 million. He's thinking small here, Peter. $1 million. What's going on?
That is literally, that's $1 million up front, you know? And then plus retainers and all that stuff down the line, right? No, I'm just kidding about that, but it is literally, that's the whole business. That's the whole business. Getting the attention of these buyers. You got to understand, these buyers, they are like, you know, they're like the Victoria's Secret models back in the day, or supermodels back in the day, right? They get 1,000 emails a week from different companies on average, depending on the category, sometimes more, of people trying to pitch their product, their service, their company to the biggest retailers in the world. So how do you stand out, right? That's the big question. How do you really stand out? And what I've always said is, and back to my previous example of that buyer that took me 7 years, it's providing the value. I mean, one of the biggest deals I did, was with a supermarket buyer. I'll give you, it's a great story. You know, he had just transferred to frozen food from snacks. And he didn't know anything about frozen food. He didn't know anything about shrimp. And there was this huge contract. It was about $5 to $10 million a year. And, you know, we were trying to win that contract. And for a year, Alex, I didn't even tell him what I did. I would just send him industry stuff. I would be like, hey, there's a new certification that came out, or there's some research that they've just sent about sustainability and packaging, and just providing that extra value. Or, hey, here's a report that I got about, you know, sales data at warehouse clubs in America, just sharing it with you. And I would just do this for a year, guys. And then we actually met a year later at a show, and he was like, oh, hey, V, like, he came to see me first out of everyone. He was one of the biggest retailers in America, and I was at like a small company at the time, you know, like 5 employees, and he came to see me first because I'd been giving him all this value. I'd been demonstrating my value even before we went into business together, right? I'd been demonstrating, back to our E, that I'm an expert in this category, right? And so that's really how, like, providing value from the start of the relationship without expecting any reciprocity, without receiving anything. And I think that's the best way to do it, like, to really demonstrate that you're the expert in the category by providing insights that the big boys, the big companies like your Nestle's, your Kellogg's of the world, your Coca-Cola's, you know, providing some sort of value that's different from them. I think that's the best way, Alex, and that's the best strategy I've had thus far, when I'm able to find little things in the industry and provide insights to these buyers that makes my opinion and my voice valuable to them.
I think that's a very valid strategy. I mean, we pay today. We all want to know our markets, and we consider ourselves experts, but we're always paying for outside advice on that, and sometimes we just don't have the time to go figure these things out. And so if you can be the trusted advisor, as we like to call it, to the customer, it often seems to be the win. So that strategy, I'm not going to call that, you know, marketing 101, but it's pretty darn close to that. So V, you've been successful in doing that, but do you feel the ongoing piece is important as well? I mean, once you get in the door, you know, I think a lot of people, they go, I've sold that, let me move on to the next one. Is that what you do, or are you offering an ongoing piece for your customers?
No, I think service is absolutely crucial, you know, and I think, you know, at the end of the day, regardless of AI and all the technology that is advancing, business is about trust and relationships, right? Whatever business you're in, it's about trust and relationships. So if I've spent all that time, Alex, to build trust and relationships with these important decision makers, right, I'm going to do that. My service has to be exceptional. It's the only way I'm going to stand out as a smaller, the mid-enterprise versus the larger enterprises. Your service just has to be above and beyond. You just have to be willing to go above and beyond for every single, for every single service point that your customer needs. And it's led to a lot of business. Like, you know, I got referred to, I get opportunities when buyers that have worked with me in the past, and I'm trying to enter a new product category at Costco, my reputation carries, Alex. You know, your reputation carries. You know, and especially when you're not greedy, Alex. I think greed is the big killer, because the opportunities are endless with these supermarket clients. You know, there's always a new product, always a new thing, but you only have one chance with your reputation.
And we only have one chance
That's
to
100%
listen,
true.
because we're going to be taking a quick break. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM with our guest, Mr. Nguyen V. All right, V Nguyen. Sorry about that. Apologize. All right,
No,
so
that's
how
correct,
can
Peter. You pronounced it perfectly. V-win.
all right, and it's a great thing because you are a win-win situation if you're with Mr.
Yeah.
Win.
That's exactly it. That's exactly the type of relationships we like to build.
So if somebody wants to reach your company and they don't even know the name of your company yet, the name of your company or how to reach you or connect or you know, hey, I have this great product and I've been trying to get it into Walmart and Costco for the last 10 years. I certainly would like to. I'd pay money if you could help me out. How are people able to reach you?
Sure, Peter. Well, our website has, you know, all our contact details, and you know, the best place is to reach us via the website, and it'll send to the team, and you'll get to the right person. Our website is www.blue, as in the ocean, BLUE, and then N for Nelly, U for under, N for Nelly, U for under.com. So that's bluenunu.com. And yeah, that's the best way to contact us. There's like, you know, the email page and phone number, et cetera, but email is the best way. And then we set up and follow up and help do the due diligence and all of those things, Peter.
Oh, that's great. And so if somebody, like, I have a widget. I don't know if you've ever heard of the widget.
Yes.
Widget's very popular right now. And so I want to get that widget into Costco and Walmart, and I'm going to it's a special widget, right? So how can I get that product in? What steps do I need to do for you, and how can you get that product in?
Look, there's no, like, the first thing I'd say is, like, you know, as I said previously, become an expert in whatever it is. And it doesn't matter what your product is. You have to believe in it, right? And I think entrepreneurs, like all of us, you have to be a little bit stubborn and crazy, right? And believe in your vision. Like, I have a great example of someone that made $5 million in 1 year at Walmart. They sold pet rocks.
Wow.
Like rocks. And then they painted them, and it was a fad. For, you know, so, and this person made literally $5 million in 1 year selling rocks that they had painted at Walmart. Became a fad. So,
what am I doing here?
You know, one is you just become an expert in your category, your product. You know everything there is that you can possibly learn about it. 2, data. Gather as much data as you can. You know, post things online. Create little videos. It doesn't cost you anything nowadays with a telephone. You can just go out and film content, and you can create a following for a brand. You can create a website using AI in 5 seconds. You know, it creates the code for you. You can create a website. You can create little videos and build a following, and then seeing if there's actual interest in your product. So collecting data points is really good, and online is a really great start, a really great way to begin that process. And number 3 is make sure that you're manufacturing, you have a solid manufacturing plan. So that's really important now, especially in the age of tariffs and the craziness that's going on with global trade. Having secure manufacturing and supply lines. So number 1, become the expert. Number 2, gather as much data as you can. And number 3, make sure your manufacturing base, or where you plan to manufacture, what country, what state, what city, you know, having all those things and having a backup manufacturing plan as well. Because right now, you know, the world with the tariff and everything like that, you need to have a backup plan for your manufacturing. So I'd say, Peter, those 3 things are the most crucial.
Where do you get the data?
So that's the tricky part. I can't tell you I'll give you an example. Have you guys heard of Liquid Death?
Liquid what?
Absolutely. That's
Liquid
that's
death.
water in a can, right? Water in a can?
Correct,
I
Alex.
love that.
Correct. Peter, so this guy was a marketing genius, and he created a company with worth hundreds of millions now before COVID, and his first product was water in a can. It's just spring water from Europe sold in a can. He sold it online. It was $40 for a 6-pack. He sold it on Amazon. But people bought it because he created these marketing videos on Facebook. So the first video was him, like in a balaclava, like a hostage situation, and his wife poured like liquid death. It was just water all over him, and he was gurgling. And he made a series of these videos, got 1 million followers on Facebook. Didn't even have a product, Peter. There was no product.
Yep.
There was no product. He didn't have. He just created a following and data, and then that's how his whole company started.
Well, we only have
on the road to 100 million.
We only have 20 seconds. So the real question should have been, how do you make your video go viral?
That's it. That's it.
Anyway,
partner up with influencers.
Unfortunately, we've come to the end. I don't mean to interrupt, but you listen to the Ask Brien radio show on KHTS 1220 and 98.1 FM. Hope you all have a great week. Over and out, Roger.